Hello lovely people, I'm K3N, welcome to my channel. This is the next in a series of videos called Slowstitches, which is sharing with you some of the stitches that I use in my slow stitch projects. And today I want to talk about the seed stitch because I think after the running stitch it's the stitch I use the most. So I've got a few examples here of pieces that have used seed stitch just to show you the different ways that I use it, and then I'll show you how I do it. Okay, so if I start with this is another one of my stitch journals, big fatty. Here behind these little colourful squares that are all on the wonk, I've used quite a fine thread. I think that was a very fine cotton. And I've done lots and lots of tiny seed stitches, kind of cream on cream in the background. And that flattens the background down and just gives this lovely texture so that these little squares, which are the main star of the piece, kind of pop forward. Also on this one, here we look on the other side. Here I've used seed stitch as well, and you can see it's all different colours. Get my finger out of the way. It's all different colours, but also in some of the stitches I've gone over the stitch twice or even 3 times to make the stitch bigger. So if you look at the orange stitches in particular, they're all stitched with the same thread, but you see some of them are bigger and some are smaller. So I'll show you that when I get to the stitching. Just put that to one side because he's been done. On this little book wrap here, I've used lots of seed stitch all over the place, and because it's a stitch that kind of goes in all directions, it makes a really nice contrast to the straight lines or the grids of the running stitch. That's another thing that's nice about it, you know, the texture and the different direction that it gives to the work, movement to the work. And there I've used all kinds of funky colours on that one. Let's put that to one side. Here on my famous sewing pouch, it's always here and it's got so much on it, so that's why I keep showing it. On this little corner, tuck it round so it doesn't flop open. I've done some eyelet stitching, which I'll come to in a future video. But in among that, I've done seed stitch, and on this one, I've used a focus. I hope it's focusing. On this one, I've used a variegated thread, so that gives a different effect as well. And you can even kind of, you know, when you're deep in the process of stitching, if you're using a variegated thread, you can play with, like you see this was kind of dark peaches and light peaches. You can kind of play with where you are on the piece as to where you put the stitches. So you could, trying to explain, you could put all the dark stitches together, and when you saw your thread was beginning to come to a lighter piece, you could hop over somewhere else and make that area lighter. So it's almost like you're painting with the thread. It's very absorbing. Well, I think so. So that's him. Put him away. Sorry, I'm still a bit croaky from my cold. I do apologise. This I keep showing to torture you because you're all asking about it. I do promise this is the next video tutorial that I'm going to post, is the little drawstring rice bags. Here in the middle of this circle I've used seed stitch, and it's blue on blue pretty much. So that's just about the texture of it. It's very difficult not to touch, but you want to see. You don't want to see my big fat fingers in the way. So they're the texture of those blue stitches, which are the same colour as the running stitches around the outside of the circle. It just gives a kind of quiet but different feeling to the overall look of that piece. So that's that one. And this one, this one I've been working on for a long time, and I've recently picked it up again. And it was kind of going to be a big pouch, but now I'm looking at it. I had it folded up yesterday. This has got nothing to do with seed stitching. I'm just going off on a tangent. I had it folded in half like that, and I thought, that's kind of book-sized. So it may turn into a stitch journal. Anyway, that's completely by the by. So in this little, I'd stitched a circle here, and then I've done various things within the circle. One of those is this really bright gold little half moon of seed stitch, because I wanted something to balance this red square that I stitched onto this side. So I chose a really bright colour, and I just did a few little seed stitches in there to make a kind of dense patch of colour. Get your finger out of the way. They're all shouting at you, get your fingers out of the way. a dense patch of colour to balance the little red square the other side. And on here we go, here I've used seed stitch. You see here this eco print leaf on this bit of old flannel sheet. It's lovely and soft. I did cream coloured seed stitch around the edge of the leaf and left the leaf plain. So again, it's texture because it's cream on cream, but it gives a bit of visual interest and it kind of lets the leaf be the star of that little area. And here again in a green I've done all the background with the seed stitch and left this little hawthorn leaf unstitched so it can show. And again in this little, do you see I use it everywhere, in this little circle. You see the difference in those two sides of that little circle. Here you've got the straight stitching, which is very graphic, and then you've got the seed stitching, which is much more organic, and I just love the balance of those two together. So those are some examples. I hope I'm close enough in. I do appreciate that on the running stitch video I was a little bit far away for you to actually see what I'm doing, so I hope this works better. So here's my little piece. I thought I'd just use this same piece again where I was doing the running stitches. And here's my needle ready threaded. If you've watched the other the cloth pouch video, you'll see the trouble I had threading my needle live on camera. So I've pre-threaded and pre-knotted. Now there's two ways you can actually make the stitch. So I'm going to come through from the back. Let's go here in the middle. I'm going to come through from the back. So you can either do it in one movement. So you're going to go back down in, the size can be whatever you want, and then come back up somewhere else a little distance away like that. And then you want to make your stitches go kind of always in a different direction to the ones next to them. So do you see I'm going in and then I'm going to come up there, kind of visualising my next stitch is going to go kind of across there, so I'm coming up there. And then I'm going to go in over there. I'm making these quite big in the hope that you can see them. And then I'm going to come back there. And you're just kind of visualising as you stitch where you want the next stitch to go. So as I finish this stitch, I'm thinking about the next stitch. I think I might want it to kind of go across the ends of these two. So I'm going to come up here somewhere. Whoops. Try not to stab myself in the process. And then I'm going to do another stitch across the ends of those two. So that's doing it in one movement. The other way you can do it, and this way if you use a hoop is the way you would do it. I very, very rarely, nearly never, use a hoop. I just like to feel the cloth in my hand. But, you know, like I always say, you do you. If you want to use a hoop, then go for it. So you can also make the stitch in two movements. So I come up and I go down. And I find that way it's much easier for me, and that's the way I generally do it, to control the size of the stitch and the placement of the stitch. And you can play with the length. I'm going to do a very small one there. So you can play with the direction, you can play with the length of the stitch that you make. I often, within one area, vary my stitches. I don't try and keep them all the same size. Often, and probably the most common, is I just stitch and see what happens. If you're filling in a specific area, for example inside a circle, you might have to do teeny tiny ones at one point to fill in the gaps. And you could also just make lots of biggish stitches, and then when you're done making a little area of big ones, you can go back in between and fill in with teeny tiny ones, like so. So, you know, it's, to me, an area of cloth unstitched is just an opportunity. So I stitch very heavily on everything, but that doesn't mean that you have to. I'm just going to put one more in there. Okay, and on the creamy coloured book wrap that I showed you, just get it back out just to show you again. You see I showed you here where I'd used the same thread, but the stitches were thick and thin. There's a thick one and there's a thin one. How I do that, you could of course just have another needle threaded with more, this is 2 strands of embroidery floss. You could take a bigger needle and thread it with, you know, 3 or 4 strands, and use that to make bigger stitches. But what I do rather than do that is I make a stitch, and then instead of moving on to my next stitch, I come back through the same hole where I just made that stitch, and then I just go over the top of it. So in that way you've got one needle, one length of thread, and you see how straight away that's twice the fatness, so it really stands out. And you're not messing about with, you know, 2 different needles, it doesn't interrupt your flow. So in and back out, and in again. And you could even go 3 times if you really wanted to. You can go as many times as you like. 2, let's do 3. And now you've got a really, you know, a really roundy stitch. So that's the seed stitch. I hope you like it. I hope you use it. If you don't use it already, give it a go. And I can't seem to stop. Now I've started, I must stop. And thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time for more cloth tails. Thank you. Bye-bye.